Beneath Buckingham Palace lies a vault so secret, not even all royals know what's inside. But one box, untouched for decades, held a pair of earrings that triggered whispers, warnings, and one woman's humiliation. These weren't just gems. They were power, betrayal, and a legacy too dangerous for Camilla to wear, until the crown changed hands. Before we uncover what this truly means for the royal family, make sure you're subscribed. Moments like this shape history quietly, and what comes next matters more than you might expect. Deep within the palace's ancient foundations, below the echoing marble halls and the grandeur of royal ceremony, exists a vault known only to a select few. It is not spoken of in public, not listed in official inventories. It's where the monarchy hides its ghosts. The royal jewel vault isn't simply a room, it's a fortress, sealed behind reinforced steel and protocol, accessible only by a coded path of permissions signed by no less than the sovereign's own hand. What's stored there is more than treasure. It's leverage, legacy, and, in some cases, deeply buried regret. Among the stacks of velvet-lined drawers and ornate chests lies one box with no crest, no insignia, and no listed origin. Box 72A. Records show it was sealed in the 1950s, but no signature or itemized contents were ever logged. Only a discreet notation: private, restricted. For decades, the box was untouched. Even during official jewel audits, it was passed over with the kind of practiced denial only institutions like the Crown can perfect. But palace staff knew it existed, and knew better than to ask. Over the years, whispers among the most senior jewel archivists became legend. Some said the box belonged to a king who abdicated. Others claimed it was filled with rejected coronation regalia. But then came the intercepted memo, years later, misfiled in an unrelated briefing, that changed everything. On a single slip of parchment, aged and half-crumpled, the typed phrase stood alone: not for queen consort use. That note alone was enough to reignite dormant fears within the firm. What was so controversial, so dangerous, that it warranted a permanent restriction? Behind closed doors, a handful of aides began piecing together old gossip and half-buried records. Their conclusion: the earrings inside the box once belonged to Wallis Simpson, the woman for whom Edward VIII gave up the throne. The ultimate royal scandal, embodied in two sparkling stones. If true, the implications were staggering. Wallis, reviled by some and envied by others, was never formally recognized by the crown. To wear something of hers, especially as queen consort, would be seen by traditionalists as heresy. A revival of shame, a crack in the facade of moral superiority the monarchy clings to. The earrings weren't just linked to scandal. They were the scandal. And so, for decades, their existence was quietly erased. Publicly, they were never acknowledged. In official statements, they simply didn't exist. No photographs, no descriptions, not even a whisper from the royal press corps. They were a buried legacy, locked away for good. Or so it seemed. But what made these earrings so forbidden? And who dared to place them back into circulation? On a quiet February morning, Camilla opened a velvet pouch tucked inside a jewelry case, and found not admiration, but a silent warning. The note inside was unsigned. The message was clear: do not wear these, ever. And with that, the line between royal duty and personal exile was drawn. She was still new to the suffocating theater of royal life, still learning how to breathe beneath the gaze of 1,000 disapproving eyes. Though Camilla had known Charles for decades, had loved him long before his destiny belonged to someone else, nothing could prepare her for what it meant to officially step into the royal fold, not as a wife, not even as a duchess, but as the woman history refused to forget, and many refused to forgive. She was not Diana. She never would be. And the institution made sure she felt it. Every movement, every glance, every silence was weighted with comparison. And it was in that isolation that she discovered the earrings. They weren't presented ceremoniously, nor acknowledged by any official. Hidden deep in a drawer in her suite at Clarence House, the earrings had been tucked among assorted pieces from the royal collection. But something about the pouch felt different. The velvet was older, worn in a way that suggested secrecy, not celebration. Camilla unwrapped it slowly, her instincts already whispering that what she was about to see wasn't meant for her. And there they were, dazzling, cold, and beside them, folded with precision and menace, was a small note, typed, not handwritten, as if to strip it of sentiment. "Do not wear these, ever." It was a command, not advice, not a suggestion, no signature, no crest, just a threat dressed in velvet. A lesser woman might have dismissed it, but Camilla had already been trained to hear what wasn't said. She recognized the sharp edges of palace politics, silent punishments, veiled messages. She took the note seriously because it reeked of power and betrayal. When she showed the earrings to Charles that evening, his reaction was a masterclass in ambiguity. He didn't flinch. He didn't ask who left the note. He barely looked at the jewels. Instead, he murmured something vague about not stirring old waters, and left the room. Was it avoidance? Was it fear? Or was it something colder? Guilt wrapped in royal detachment. Camilla didn't know, and perhaps neither did he. But what she did know was that these earrings had been placed in her path deliberately. Someone wanted her to find them, but not to wear them. A test? A trap? Or both? She could feel their history pulsing beneath the gems. Something forbidden. Something unfinished. Her first instinct was to rebel, to wear them to the next public engagement and dare the whispers to rise. But duty clawed at her pride. The palace still viewed her as a tolerated presence, not a rightful one. Wearing them could mean political suicide, or worse, damaging Charles's future. And so, with trembling hands and a heart heavy with rage, Camilla wrapped them again, sealed the pouch, and hid it in the back of her private drawer. Not because she was afraid, but because she knew her time hadn't come. Not yet. Yet secrets, like buried jewels, never stay hidden forever, especially in a family where the past is never truly past. As the nation wept, another transition quietly unfolded. Charles ascended, but in a private study behind locked doors, a different coronation was taking place. Camilla, newly queen consort, opened a long forbidden drawer. The earrings were waiting, and this time there was no note to stop her. The air around Balmoral felt heavier than ever. Mourning draped over the royal estates like a second skin, thick with expectation, legacy, and quiet dread. The Queen was gone. The era of Elizabeth, unyielding, towering, untouched, had ended. Black garments, church bells, headlines of grief. Those were for the public. But behind palace walls, something colder stirred. A shift. Power had moved, and with it came decisions no longer buffered by a matriarch's command. Charles was now king, and Camilla, finally, undeniably, was queen consort. Official, irrefutable, irreversible. Charles changed in ways subtle but seismic. He moved with the weight of inheritance, his gaze sharpened by a lifetime of waiting. The mourning mask concealed something else behind his eyes. Resolve. The man who had once bent under the shadows of others now stood at the center of the world's oldest monarchy. And beside him, Camilla was no longer simply tolerated. She was enthroned, not by affection, but by right. And that made everything different. On the fourth evening following Elizabeth's funeral, as the family dispersed and staff shuffled about in solemn choreography, Camilla made a request that stopped the room. "Bring me the earrings," she said quietly, but without hesitation. The silence that followed was palpable. Aides exchanged glances. One even asked, stunned, "Are you sure?" No one had spoken of them in years. They weren't part of any official collection. Their very existence was a rumor threaded with fear. But the Queen was gone, and so was the rule that bound them. The earrings had waited, locked away, untouched, but never forgotten. Their retrieval wasn't just an act of style, it was a statement. This was Camilla's first solo act as Queen Consort, and it wasn't about crowns or speeches. It was about reclaiming what had once been used to shame her. It was about lifting the silence that had hovered over her for decades and rewriting it on her own terms. The jewels that once marked her as an outsider would now crown her as sovereign's equal. Charles didn't object. In fact, those closest to the situation suggest he quietly endorsed it. Not with ceremony, but with a nod, a pause, a glance that spoke more than words. Maybe it was tribute to a love that had endured public torment. Or maybe it was rebellion, a final break from a past that had always cast him as the weak heir beneath his mother's iron rule. Either way, the message was unmistakable. The rules had changed. The earrings were no longer forbidden. They had returned. Not as relics of disgrace, but as symbols of survival, of triumph, of quiet vengeance dressed in diamonds. And as Camilla held them once more, this time not in secret but with purpose, she wasn't just wearing history. She was rewriting it. But when she finally wore them in public, the monarchy trembled. Not from scandal, but from memory. It was just another gala, until Camilla stepped out. Cameras flashed, jewel historians gasped, royal watchers froze. The earrings had returned, and the past with them. In that moment, every buried betrayal surfaced. For some, it was liberation. For others, it was war. She knew exactly what she was doing. This wasn't a spontaneous choice or a careless misstep. Camilla's decision to wear the earrings, those earrings, was deliberate, calculated. Her gown was subdued, her demeanor regal, but her ears carried the weight of royal memory. The very jewels once whispered about in corridors and buried in vaults now shimmered under the chandeliers of aristocracy. They weren't just accessories. They were statements carved in diamond and fire. No announcement had been made, no advance notice given. The palace press team had been briefed on everything, except this. The effect was immediate, electric. Fashion blogs tried to spin it first, describing the ensemble with predictable adoration. But within minutes, jewel historians began raising alarm bells. The shape, the cut, the rumored provenance. It didn't take long before someone recognized what they truly were. The cursed pair. The forgotten set. The earrings allegedly gifted by Edward VIII to Wallace Simpson. The ones that hadn't been seen since the days of exile, rebellion, and royal disgrace. Headlines shifted from style to scandal with ruthless speed. Inside the palace, panic bloomed like wildfire. Aides scrambled to identify who had authorized it. Whispers tore through the halls. Was this sanctioned? Was it a mistake? Or worse, was it a challenge? Within hours, a classified internal memo was drafted under the title, Crisis Management Heritage Optics. It detailed potential public backlash, advised strategic silence, and recommended redirecting attention toward Catherine's upcoming charitable event. But the damage, or the reckoning, was already done. Among the family, reactions were as quiet as they were telling. William and Catherine maintained a calculated distance, their public faces unshaken. But behind closed doors, it's said William confronted palace staff with a single question. Why those earrings? Why now? There was no answer, only the same silence that had always cloaked them. And Catherine, known for her precise fashion diplomacy, made a subtle statement of her own, opting to wear Diana's sapphires the following week, a message, perhaps, or a warning. Online, the storm only grew. Social media lit up with theories. Some believed the earrings were cursed, dragging every woman who wore them into controversy. Others speculated that Camilla's choice was revenge cloaked in elegance, a final strike against a system that had once tried to bury her in shame. Theories bloomed like wildfire. Was this an act of rebellion against Elizabeth's memory? Or an attempt to finally claim the respect she had been denied for decades? Either way, one thing was clear. Camilla was no longer asking for acceptance. She was demanding it. And yet, beneath the public fury and fascination, something deeper stirred. The earrings had broken through more than just protocol. They'd cracked open a chamber of royal history that had long been sealed. But this wasn't just about Camilla. The earrings unearthed something far older and far more dangerous. Buried deep in the royal inheritance agreements lies a clause so archaic it's practically invisible. And yet it was used to keep the earrings locked away. The bloodline clause, a single sentence that changed the fate of a duchess and nearly fractured the throne. In the labyrinth of legal documents that govern royal succession, property, and privilege, there exists a hidden rule rarely mentioned, almost never enforced. But when it is, its impact is seismic. Known to a select few as the bloodline clause, it was written long ago to safeguard the crown's most sacred heirlooms from falling into what was once considered illegitimate hands. Specifically, it restricted inheritance of certain items, particularly jewels and ceremonial regalia, to those born of untainted royal bloodlines. A quiet instrument of exclusion disguised as tradition. The clause had gathered dust for decades, seen as a historical curiosity. That is, until it was suddenly revived, not publicly, but in the shadows, during Camilla's earliest years in the royal fold. According to palace insiders, it was this clause that justified sealing the earrings away. The logic was cold and brutal. Camilla, though married to the future king, was not born of noble or royal descent. Worse, her reputation, shaped by public opinion and tabloid firestorms, rendered her an unsuitable bearer of a jewel already steeped in scandal. It was the very same rule once used to prevent Wallis Simpson from ever laying claim to state-owned jewels after Edward VIII's abdication. History, it seemed, was repeating itself, and this time with an eerily familiar cruelty. Royal legal advisers allegedly pored over decades-old precedents, tracing the chain of ownership, leveraging the most technical interpretations of legitimacy. Behind closed doors, arguments raged. Who qualifies as born to rule in the modern age? Was marriage to the future king not enough? Did loyalty, endurance, and service count for nothing when measured against bloodlines and perception? When Charles caught wind of it, sources claim he erupted in fury, not just at the decision, but at the manipulation of history to serve a narrative of exclusion. To him, it wasn't about jewelry. It was about power, legacy, and a wife who had stood by him through years of scandal and humiliation, now being denied not by the public, but by the system he was about to inherit. In a heated conversation described only as tense enough to echo, Charles reportedly confronted legal counsel and demanded clarity. Was his wife queen in name only, or in authority, too? The answer, it turned out, was neither official nor permanent. Because days after the Queen's death, without fanfare or public record, the clause vanished, erased, not amended, removed. The document housing it was reissued under a new version, this time with a subtle gap where the clause once lived. No one claimed responsibility, no press release, no trace, just silence. And in its place, permission. The earrings were no longer restricted. Camilla was no longer denied, but the damage, in many ways, had already been done. Because the last gatekeeper wasn't the law, it was grief, resentment, and everything the crown had refused to say for decades. But even as laws fell and crowns shifted, one final barrier remained, written not in parchment, but in emotion. No crown Camilla wears is free from Diana's ghost. And when she fastened those earrings to her ears, it wasn't just the public that felt the chill. For some, it was sacrilege. For others, destiny. But the one question no one dared to ask: did Diana ever see the earrings? There are hauntings that don't require specters, only memory. And in the case of Camilla, every step she took into the heart of the monarchy was paved over Diana's shadow. It was never simply about roles or titles. It was about presence, about public memory, about the one woman the nation had canonized and the one they had once condemned. Camilla had fought for space inside an institution that had weaponized that comparison for decades. But even after the crown touched her head, the whispers never fully died. And when she wore those earrings, they roared. Observers were quick to notice what the palace refused to acknowledge. The pair bore a chilling resemblance to a set Diana herself had favored. Not identical, but close enough to send royal watchers into a frenzy. The drop, the setting, even the cold sharpness of the stones echoed photographs from Diana's golden years. Those brief moments when she seemed untouchable, beloved, radiant beyond the monarchy's grasp. Could it be coincidence? Or was it something more sinister? The speculation was instant and ruthless. Some believed the earrings had once been offered to Diana and rejected. Others insisted she had worn them privately, only once, then returned them. Disturbed, perhaps, by their origins. But the most biting theories suggested that the earrings had been set aside because of Diana. That Elizabeth, seeing the emotional toll her daughter-in-law endured, had locked the jewels away in silent solidarity, ensuring they would never spark more hurt. If true, Camilla's choice to resurrect them wasn't just bold, it was provocative. What came next only added fuel to the fire. William, known for his composure, was rumored to have confronted his father after Camilla's appearance. Not with shouting, but with silence. A silence thick with accusation. A silence that echoed louder than outrage. It was said that he walked out of a scheduled private meeting the following day. Catherine, for her part, offered no comment, but wore pearls. Diana's pearls. A quiet reminder of lineage, of memory, of territory. And then came another twist. Tabloids began circling a chilling rumor that Camilla had visited Kensington Palace privately just days before the earrings were unveiled. No cameras, no fanfare, just a quiet, unannounced visit. To what end, no one knew. But some insiders hinted at a message, not to the public, but to history. Was it an act of reverence, reconciliation, or something more defiant? Did Camilla walk the halls of Diana's former home as a queen, not in mourning, but in triumph? Even palace loyalists were divided. Was this a tribute or a provocation? A claim to continuity or a rivalry wrapped in diamonds? The truth remained locked behind royal lips. But what was clear was this: The past was no longer buried. The earrings had summoned it, unleashed it. And in their shimmer, every fracture in the family was suddenly visible. And then came the leak, the document that would change everything. A leaked palace document, partially redacted, surfaced at midnight. 3 initials, 1 phrase. Foresee, only after ascension. No date, no signature, but suddenly the narrative twisted. Was Camilla always meant to have them? Or was this one final manipulation from beyond the grave? The leak came without warning. No trace of its origin. No watermark. No digital footprint. Just a single PDF, circulated among a handful of royal reporters, quietly at first, then with a force that shattered the silence. The document was grainy, a scanned page with most lines blacked out, but what remained was explosive. It appeared to be from within the royal collection's restricted files, a directive of some kind, and there, at the center, 5 words that changed everything. Foresee, only after ascension. Speculation exploded like wildfire. The letter, though stripped of context, hinted at a carefully timed inheritance. Suddenly, the earrings were no longer an act of defiance. They were a fulfillment. A plan carried out posthumously. But whose plan? And why the secrecy? Forensic analysts, many self-proclaimed, rushed to dissect the document. The font, the spacing, the paper's fold line. But it was the initials scrawled faintly in the corner that sent the most shivers. ER. Or was it PM? Online theorists debated endlessly. Was it Elizabeth Regina, Philip Mountbatten, or even Charles, cloaked under plausible deniability? Handwriting experts were brought in. Some claimed the looping letters matched Elizabeth's known script in her later years. Others pointed to an older style, suggesting it dated back to the 1980s, possibly during a period of heightened scrutiny around Charles's personal life. And still, others saw something colder in the style. Minimalist, forceful, closer to Philip's wartime notes than the Queen's deliberate elegance. The truth remained elusive, and that only made it more dangerous. The phrase, only after ascension, quickly became a lightning rod. Some saw it as a blessing, a long-delayed recognition that Camilla would one day wear what had once been forbidden. Others saw something darker, a manipulation from beyond the grave, a final twist of the knife, forcing Camilla to live under the weight of a timed approval she couldn't question. Was it an invitation or a trap? Digital sleuths began linking the wording to an older missing volume from the Royal Household Journals, Volume 9A, last known to be in Queen Elizabeth's personal possession. That journal, according to rumors, contained private reflections on Charles's future and Camilla's role in it. And now it was gone. Disappeared from the archives with no record of removal. The timing of the leak, just weeks after Camilla's public appearance in the earrings, was too precise to ignore. Someone wanted this scene. Someone wanted the story to bend in a new direction. Media outlets split down the middle. Some called the leak a forgery, a cruel attempt to reframe history. Others defended it as long overdue transparency. Commentators demanded palace clarification. Yet the firm held its line. No comment, no denial, no admission, just silence. And that silence spoke louder than anything. Because if the monarchy did approve the earrings, what else had they sanctioned in secret? What other relics were waiting for their moment to resurface, draped not in velvet, but in vengeance? But perhaps the most chilling truth is not who owned the earrings, but what they always represented. The earrings now rest in the Queen's personal collection, worn, photographed, undeniable. But what they cost in silence, loyalty, and blood is something no ledger records. In the end, Camilla may have worn the jewels, but it's the monarchy that still bears their weight. There is no press release, no interview, no acknowledgement. Camilla's public stance on the earrings is silence, strategic, unwavering, and deliberate. She doesn't need to explain. The images speak for themselves. The glint of forbidden history now resting openly on her, no longer hidden in the velvet shadows of palace drawers. She walks with the calm of someone who has endured exile in plain sight and returned with a crown on her head. Yet even in triumph, her expression carries the wear of decades spent in waiting, in judgment, in whispered rooms where her name was never spoken without caution. The earrings, like Camilla herself, have gone from taboo to institution, but not without scars. Under Charles's reign, the monarchy is shifting, not in spectacle, but in tone. More calculated, less theatrical. Tradition remains, but control is tighter, more private. And yet, even with that control, the legacy of the earrings lingers like smoke. They are no longer just a piece of jewelry. They are an emblem of everything the firm tried to suppress. Passion over protocol, resilience over reputation, and the dangerous truth that history is not always obedient. That sometimes what is hidden refuses to stay buried. The public remains divided. Some see Camilla's choice to wear them as an earned defiance, a final arrival into a space that denied her for too long. Others call it insensitive, a tone-deaf display of power that forgets Diana, forgets pain, forgets discretion. For every voice of admiration, there is another of outrage, and caught between them is a monarchy that must now reckon with a symbol it can neither erase nor fully defend. The earrings tell a story the palace never intended to share, and now it can't silence it. But beyond Camilla, beyond the crown, the emotional fault lines run deeper. William remains publicly composed, but those who watch closely can sense the quiet distance between him and his father, between memory and duty. The weight of legacy has always been heavy, but now it carries a new layer. Unspoken questions about loyalty, inheritance, and what these jewels say about the future of the monarchy. What does it mean for the next generation to inherit a crown built on contradictions, built on both unity and division? And then there is the lingering question no one dares to voice aloud. What else lies hidden? If these earrings survived exile, silence, and scandal, what other items rest within the royal vault, still untouched, still bearing the weight of unspoken truths? What other stories have been sealed behind stone and steel, waiting for the right moment or the right person to re-emerge? Because the truth is this: crowns change, faces change, but secrets endure. And sometimes all it takes is a shimmer of diamonds to shake the very walls of history. The earrings were only the beginning. The vault remembers, and it is far from empty. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.